Good morning. Well, there's no hiding it, is there? This week I had surgery for a small sunspot on my forehead. It turned out to be a basal carcinoma and required quite an extensive cut into my head. So it's resulted in what will, I hope, be quite an impressive scar and, for the moment, a black eye and a plaster. When it comes to the Psalms and it comes to the way that they consider the sinfulness of human nature, which actually is found in the whole of the scriptures, we perhaps find them out of kilter with much of the modern church. Psalm 36 starts, "An oracle within my heart concerning the sinfulness of the wicked." We don't think too deeply about sin these days, and yet sin, like cancer, grows within us. When the sun causes spots to grow on our skin, we have cause for concern. But the spiritual sins of the heart, like pride and covetousness, anger, things that can take place in secret. In fact, it tells us in Psalm 36 verse 4, even on his bed he plots evil. He commits himself to a sinful course. He does not reject what is wrong. People have a very high view of themselves, and to challenge that with a view of sinfulness can become quite difficult. In verse 2, it says, in his own eyes he flatters himself. The sense is he smooths over the things that are there within his heart and has no regard for them. There's no fear of God. There's no dread. There's no conscience. There's no concern of anything that he does being found out. And the problem I found is that there are many Christians who also seem to think, well, we've got grace and therefore sin doesn't matter. Sin's of no real consequence any longer. Nothing could be further from the truth. The catalogue of leaders who, through moral failure and all kinds of compromises, have hit the headlines and brought shame to the Christian cause is too long to go into any detail. And I remember Terry Virgo saying, the bigger your name, when you fall, the more people you have to apologise to. But the more people you do damage to. And as Christians, we must examine our hearts. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. It could be said this is quite morbid and depressing. In fact, it was said of Alexander White that he took a certain delight in revealing the sinfulness of his own heart when he was preaching, and was once out walking, talking about a popular preacher, Henry Drummond. And he said, well, the problem with Henry is he doesn't ken anything about sin. Sin didn't really feature. But some people will say, yeah, but we live in a day of grace. Yeah, but Titus tells us that the grace of God teaches us to say no. It really must do. When I consider the Puritans, how John Owen, his great treatise on indwelling sin in believers, these men knew the depths of their own hearts. They knew that there was lurking within them temptations that needed to be put to death, mortified, the mortification of sin in believers. John Wesley once said, give me 100 preachers who fear nothing but sin and desire nothing but God, and I will take England. To fear sin and to avoid it, to pray against it as that spiritual cancer which is in us that needs the radical surgery and cutting out, is a very necessary discipline for us today. But the psalmist knows that when you just focus on sin, you can end up being morbid. And the second half of the psalm starts in verse 5. Your love, O Lord, reaches the heavens, your faithfulness the skies, your righteousness is like the mighty mountains, your justice like the great deep. There's a balance here. If we just focus on our sin and look inwards, we will get dragged down. But if we look up to the majestic character, the glory, the righteousness, the justice, the love of God, that's like the mighty mountains that remain there forever, then our hearts will have the right kind of balance. How precious is your unfailing love. Both high and low among men find refuge. in the shadow of your wings. They feast on the abundance of your house, and you give them drink from your river of delights. For with you is the fountain of life, and in your light we see light. It's good to look in. It's great to look up. The psalm ends with a prayer that God will continue his love towards those who know him. But may the foot of the proud not come against me, nor the hand of the wicked drive me away. See how the evildoers lie fallen, thrown down, not able to rise. The one place where we find the love and the justice of God in complete harmony above all others, for our view anyway, is in the cross of Jesus. The bitterness and the agony that he went through, the pains that he bore for us on the cross, correspond to exactly the nature of our sin. And yet, the wonderful love that he displays. Let's behold the cross, where we find the love and the justice of God kissing one another and bringing peace to us.